Well, this day is here. You knew it was coming. I mean, we talked about it just the other day, but it is indeed official. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Pelosi is out. Ding dong. You know the rest. Okay, Nancy Pelosi, the longtime 39-year congresswoman out of San Francisco, is finally calling it quits. I mean, about time. About time. A lot of things going on here. One, she's totally lost control of her party. It's a total disaster. I want to go to Mike Johnson's reaction on all of this in just a moment, because he's pointing out, yes, in fact, the obvious. They've been taken over by socialists. What do you know? Mamdani. You got the Jasmine Crockett's of the world and the AOCs of the world. Woo! Okay, so she's lost control. She's lost her way. So that's pretty symbolic. The Democratic Party, as you know, it really is no more. And then the other thing you're going to wonder is, how nervous is she? How nervous is she, given what we have now learned about J6 and all the things that have come out, including her own admission that she should have done a heck of a lot better. We're going to get to all of that. But again, if you're just joining me right now, Nancy Pelosi, no more. She is retiring. She is leaving politics for good. Although, you know, she just can't help herself. I have a feeling she'll be saying a few snide things along the way whenever she can. I want to go to her announcement. She made the announcement by way of a long-winded video. Oh my goodness, this thing was 6 minutes long. I had to listen to the whole thing, and it had fancy music and the whole 9 yards. Oh, I bet you it was produced by Alexandra Pelosi, her documentary filmmaker daughter, that also produced all the footage that you saw in a loop on CNN. That was like talking about nepotism, for goodness sakes. That was her own daughter that produced all of that. Anyway, my guess is she did this one too. I took the music out and I shortened it considerably, because no need to inflict that kind of pain on you. But here we go.
I say to my colleagues in the House all the time, no matter what title they have bestowed upon me, Speaker, Leader, Whip, there has been no greater honor for me than to stand on the House floor and say, I speak for the people of San Francisco. I have truly loved serving as your voice in Congress, and I've always honored the song of St. Francis, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace, the anthem of our city. That is why I want you, my fellow San Franciscans, to be the first to know. I will not be seeking re-election to Congress. With a grateful heart, I look forward to my final year of service as your proud representative. As we go forward, my message to the city I love is this: San Francisco, know your power. We have made history. We have made progress. We have always led the way. And now we must continue to do so by remaining full participants in our democracy and fighting for the American ideals we hold dear. In doing so, we ensure that our city shines on as a beacon of hope, justice, and peace for the country and for generations to come.
Has she been to San Francisco lately?
San Francisco is the greatest city on earth.
Really? I mean, maybe it was at one point in time. I'll tell you, I used to live there. I called it Sucks Francisco, because believe me, it sucked. And this was 20 years ago. It's gotten worse. You try taking a little walk down Market Street. You see how you feel. I mean, it's bad, guys. It's bad. And it was bad back in my day. This was back in the day when, we're going back a ways, my friend Kimberly Guilfoyle was actually married to Gavin Newsom. So, I mean, and Gavin actually was talking about the need to get the homeless off the street and to stop giving them handouts. That must have been Kimberly's influence. I mean, he was a Democrat even then, but, you know, the party has changed dramatically. Now they're like, okay, you know, line up. We'll give you all the free cash and free stuff you want. It is a totally different party. It's a totally different city, and it's not a pretty place to be. But Nancy, you know, she's kind of in her old age. What is she, 85? Going off the deep end just a little bit. This is what she was saying to CNN just the other day as she was telegraphing this move of retirement. She had to kind of get a dig in there against Donald Trump, a pretty big dig. I mean, a logical person wouldn't say such an extraordinary thing, because what you're about to hear is her call him basically the worst person on the planet, like ever. And it's like, Nancy, I mean, at some point it becomes hyperbole. You sound like a crazy person. And by the way, this definitely was not her good side. Watch.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all
oopsie daisy. I played you the wrong one, but this is good too. We're going to get to that momentarily, because she's out there trying to say that somehow she wasn't responsible for the alleged cover-up of J6. It's pretty wild, but do I have the soundbite? I want to play you the soundbite. Maybe we don't. Anyway, we played it the other day, so no need to rehash all that. She looked kind of, as I said, not herself on CNN and started going on about Donald Trump being the worst person in the world, that he was totally vile, etc. And it's like, Nancy, I mean, you got really bad people out there. And you want to actually say those things about him, the president of the United States of America? I mean, we had to live through the whole illegitimate thing, right, for 4 years when he first won, and now he's just vile. That's her take on it. But I'll tell you, Nancy is potentially in a little bit of trouble, And I say this because we don't fully have a total read. I mean, we have some information that's come out. The Federalist did some good reporting on this. We have Ted Cruz and his commentary, Kash Patel, and what he has said about what went down, including, by the way, the Capitol Hill police chief. We have a lot of information about what was happening on J6. But, you know, if you listen to her version of history, it's something else entirely. Nancy Pelosi could be in a lot of trouble for the alleged cover-up of J6. In other words, I'm getting to the Capitol Hill police, because we've learned that President Trump had asked repeatedly for the Capitol Hill police, and he never got them. And you got to ask yourself now, why was that? And why was it that the only journalist that happened to be there, and you can't even call her a journalist, again, she was a documentary filmmaker, Alexandra Pelosi, the daughter of course, one Nancy Pelosi. She just happens to be there with mommy on that day, running around with her little video camera, taking all kinds of footage that she eventually, I don't know if she sold to CNN. That would really make it bad, right? And she's making a pretty penny off the whole thing too. But she was apparently doing this documentary for HBO. So Nancy knows days in advance that all of this is going to happen. And instead of calling the Capitol Hill police, she calls in Alexandra, her daughter, the documentary filmmaker. So this has come up over and over again. In fact, she was just approached by an independent reporter on the street the other day, and boy, oh boy, did she lose it. I mean, she really lost it. Watch.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all concerned that the new January 6th committee will find you liable for that day?
Okay.
Are you at all concerned about the new January 6th committee finding you liable for that day? Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious journalist?
The American people want to know. We still have questions. Thank you.
Whoa. Okay. So just to back up, it's not really a Republican talking point. It's actually something that has been reported on extensively. In fact, you know, let's go back to, I don't know. Let's go back to some of the tweets of Chief Stephen's son. She said Donald Trump delayed deploying the National Guard on January 6th when our capital was under violent attack and lives were at stake. Now he's activating the D.C. Guard to distract from his incompetent mishandling of terrorists, healthcare, education, and immigration, just to name a few. She put that out this summer. He actually cleaned up D.C. pretty darn fast, too. So she's still sticking with this story that somehow he was delaying the National Guard. And what do you know? You get Chief Stephen's son, who was running the joint at the time, saying, ma'am, it is long past time to be honest with the American people. On January 3rd, I requested National Guard assistance, but your sergeant of arms denied it. Under federal law, 2 USC 1970, I was prohibited from calling them in without specific approval. I mean, that same day, he writes, Carol Corbin at the Pentagon office, National Guard support. We learned that, but I was forced to decline because I lacked the legal authority. On January 6th, when the Capitol was under attack, and despite my repeated calls, your Sergeant of Arms, again, denied my urgent request for over 70 agonizing minutes, running it up the chain for your approval. When I needed assistance, it was denied. When it suited you, you ordered fencing topped with a wire and surrounded the Capitol with thousands of armed National Guard troops. So in other words, he's calling her total BS on this. Is it a Republican talking point? For goodness sakes, we've now since learned through some of the reporting by Molly Hemingway over at the Federalist that Liz Cheney and the January 6th committee altogether were suppressing the evidence that would have exonerated Donald Trump because he had been pushing for the National Guard and he couldn't get it because of all these protocols. And you know, and Nancy knows it. Nancy knows it. And we know she knows it because you see some of that footage got leaked. I don't know how Alexandra let this one go by, but some of that footage got leaked rather recently, and we found out that Nancy was in a car after all this was going down and was like furious with staff that they hadn't done more. Listen to this.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
I take responsibility. I did hear that, right? They should have had more. They should have done more. And yet she has the audacity to just last week tell that reporter, oh, you're nothing but a Republican talking point machine. Let's just get to the truth, for goodness sakes, okay? You didn't do your job. Maybe it was negligence. Maybe you had no idea that this was going to be as bad as it was. Or maybe you seized the opportunity. Again, I go back to the peculiar thing that you just called in one journalist, your daughter. And again, she's not a journalist. Filmmaker, okay? Trust me, there's a difference, okay? There really is. You're a documentary filmmaker. It is completely different than being a journalist. She has a narrative that she's trying to tell, and she uses music and fancy things to try and lead you down this super scary thing. And that's what we saw over and over and over again on CNN, almost as though it was theirs. I mean, at times you would think CNN was there inside the Capitol building, not Alexandra Pelosi, daughter of the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who didn't call in the National Guard when the chain of command said she was supposed to be the one responsible. And this came up in hearings, don't forget. Ted Cruz asking Kash Patel about that day. Let's go to it.
What were you doing on that day?
On that day specifically, responding to preparing to mobilize and deploy the National Guard once we got the lawful request from the local governing authority, which was the mayor of D.C. and the Speaker of the House.
Now, how many days in advance were you working to prepare the Department of Defense to help secure the Capitol on January 6th?
Days in advance, Senator. We were in the Oval Office on an unrelated national security matter with the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and myself. And the President authorized up to 20,000 plus National Guardsmen and women to secure any security measures necessary related to the Capitol. So we were moving to the fullest extent of the law before the requisite request came from a local governing authority days ahead of time.
And while you were Chief of Staff at DOD, how many times did DOD approach Capitol Police and ask if they needed National Guard assistance?
I believe those letters are well documented, numerous instances, and numerous of those instances, those requests were shut down.
Now, am I correct that the Capitol Sergeant at Arms said assistance was unnecessary?
That's correct, Senator.
Who did the Sergeant at Arms report to?
The Speaker of the House.
That would have been Nancy Pelosi at the time. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And would that also be Chuck Schumer, then the Senate Majority Leader?
The Sergeant at Arms, yes, Senator, reports up there.
Did Mayor Bowser, the Democrat elected mayor in D.C., either request or allow National Guard assistance?
She put in writing on the days leading up to January 6th a declination for National Guard additional support. And that letter is available publicly to the world.
So, and just to speak English for folks at home, a declination meant she said no, don't send National Guard. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a simple question, because from the questioning from my Democrat colleagues, they might think otherwise. Do you condemn violence against law enforcement?
All of it.
I don't get it. Like, why isn't she calling the Capitol Hill Police? Like, why didn't she? Why did they wait so long? Why would you allow this thing to get so out of control? I think it's a fair question. And I think, guys, the answer actually is because they recognized it as an opportunity. And these are opportunists opportunists after all. I mean, they're a bunch of politicians, for goodness sakes. And you know what politicians do. They look for their edge. And they felt that they had their edge. So if they could somehow prove that Donald Trump was trying to take over the government, then they could squash the MAGA movement forever. Right? And in fact, isn't that indeed what they tried to do? I mean, when you think of the cancel culture that happened, following that, and everything kept going back to, well, we're doing this because of J6, because we cannot allow anything like this to ever happen again, even though if you really dig down into it, what you might have seen is that there was a failure in part on behalf of the Democrats themselves. And the media was complicit in it. Totally, utterly complicit in all of it. And then what came of this? Think about it. What came of this? What came of this was this whole J6 investigation, this whole J6 committee. They ran with Alexander Pelosi's footage, daughter of Nancy, and they played it in prime time. And they went out and they hired a bunch of ABC News producers, very proud of themselves because they said, oh, this story is so important. We need to make sure it's very, very accessible to the average American public. And they ran with this, and then they initiated a series of investigations, and they had Jack Smith trying to go after the president for all of this, and they brought about something which you may now know, and we have talked about at length on this show, as Arctic frost. So the Arctic frost investigation began as a result of the J6 stuff. You know, they had to go after somebody, right? They wanted to go after all of MAGA and Donald Trump and make sure that he never ran again. And so, you know, he's pretty upset about it, Donald Trump, that is, because it's all coming out right now. And we learned that they went after, this article says 160 Republicans, but actually the number's more like 400 plus Republicans. And they went after them in a pretty vicious way. We haven't seen anything like it really since the days of the FBI targeting, say, Martin Luther King Jr., with something that was called the COINTEL operation. And that was born under Herbert Hoover and then flourished on through the 60s. You had all kinds of things happening. And now as a result of this all coming out, you now have people getting fired. So Cash and my friend Dan Bongino have gotten in there and they have fired all the spying agents that allegedly were involved with this. But there's another one, I guess Aaron Tapp, who just lost his job last week. It's not clear if he's going to be able to keep his pension. He'd been there 22 years and he was part of this as well. All in the name of doing such good, right? That's how it's always characterized. I guess this T-Bolt guy, he was the one who initiated it from the beginning because he was seen as somebody who could take on these sensitive investigations, perhaps because they knew that maybe T-Bolt, and I'm conjecturing here, didn't quite have the quote-unquote ethics that some others would. Why do I say that? Because it turns out that Timothy T-Bolt, in his investigation into the MAGA movement and the J6 origins, etc., didn't actually get the proper approval at the FBI to do anything that he was doing. And we know this because Chuck Grassley's investigation, Senator Grassley, has shown that he had a document, Tim T-Bolt did, he's since resigned, that showed him opening the case and then approving the case. And the way the rules work at the FBI, there's something called no self-approval. You can actually do this, and you go back to section 3523 of the FBI's Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide, no self-approval rule. So what was Tim T-Bolt doing? Why was he self-approving his own thing? I think we got some serious questions that we got to be asking in all of this, right? In all of this. But they wanted to choke off this MAGA movement. And so the next thing you know, they're out there gathering phone records. Jack Smith, he wanted all the phone records of anybody that talked to anybody in the White House, anybody associated with Trump. I'm like, wait, is my phone number on there? I would assume so. They got 30 million of them, okay? You know, if you talk to so-and-so or so-and-so or so-and-so, you were suddenly in jeopardy. And that's actually really above and beyond anything that should be happening. You shouldn't be spying on U.S. senators, for goodness sakes. And where were the phone companies and all this? One of them rolled over and played dead. The other actually had some, you know what, can I say cojones, and stood up and said, this subpoena seems a little bit weird. Here's Grassley explaining it. And this is important to understand and to hear.
I've recently been informed by Verizon that at least 11 members with Verizon accounts were affected. That includes a hard line for Senator Cruz's office and a staffer's cell phone for former Senator Loeffler. AT&T informed me they challenged the legal basis for Jack Smith's efforts, and Smith backed down.
Okay, so good for AT&T for challenging that, and interesting that Jackie, you backed right down, huh? Did you know that what you were doing was kind of wrong and kind of out there, and maybe not kosher? I won't play it again, but Senator Kennedy had some comments. He's like, for goodness sakes, could they just go to Amazon and get themselves a pair of testicles? Could they do that, please? Could they go buy that? Because, here's the deal. You do need some kind of court order, a subpoena, a FISA warrant. You need a U.S. Patriot Act letter. You need something. But the phone companies, they could also say, this kind of feels a little flimsy to me, because they could be then held liable. And I wouldn't be surprised if they are held liable, along with maybe Nancy Pelosi, who's trying to step aside just to kind of save herself. The Wiretap Act, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, State Privacy Eavesdropping Acts. Listen, all of these senators are pretty darn mad, as they should be. And they're now saying, as a private individual too, don't I have any kind of rights? Well, here's my short answer. You absolutely positively do. This was Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's Watergate. Ted said it.
Frost is Joe Biden's Watergate. Merrick Garland was a fundamentally corrupt attorney general. Jack Smith was a fundamentally corrupt prosecutor. This was a political enemies list from the beginning. 197 subpoenas for 430 Republican entities and individuals. That is an absolute and egregious abuse of power.
Hell yeah, you better believe it. Donald Trump is saying, hey, MAGA, do not ever let this happen again. And by the way, let me just say for both sides, okay? For both sides, don't let it happen again. They were trying to map out the entire MAGA movement. That's what the phone gathering data was about. You can't do that, okay? You just can't do that. They weren't listening to the calls. I have to be careful, because everybody's like, oh, Ted Cruz and companies say that, and Josh Hawley, I think, said that they were spying on him by listening to his phone calls, by wiretapping. It's a little different than that. It's actually called logging. And it's a way to secure all the metadata, like all the phone data. So you figure out that Senator Marsha Blackburn was talking to, say, another senator, Senator Lindsey Graham, and then you get the Lindsey Graham, you find out where he is and his location and how long he was talking to Marsha Blackburn, and then you're able to go out and say, okay, and who else was Marsha talking to? Did she talk to Trish Regan? Oh, well, we can figure out where was Trish Regan when they were talking and how long were they talking, and then who were the people that Senator Lindsey Graham was talking to. You understand how this gets so big so fast, and that's how you get the 30 million phone records, for goodness sakes. To do what with? To do what? John Solomon from Just the News, he said it well. Listen to this, guys.
The committee gets up and running in 2022. They go out and get this massive dragnet of phone records, 30 million. You don't need 30 million phone calls to figure out what was going on January 6th. What were they doing? They were mapping the MAGA movement with every piece of data they could. It was basically creating an enemies list. That's what the J6 committee was doing in this project. And think about the scope and scale of what they've now done. 30 million lines of phone records trying to figure out everybody who talked to the Trump White House. 92 groups, including Charlie Kirk's TPUSA and everybody else in the conservative movement. 8 members of Congress in the Senate, 1 member of the Congress in the House. They were mapping an enemies list. This was an investigation purportedly to solve what happened at the Capitol, that instead was trying to figure out who are the movers and shakers in the MAGA movement that we can stop in 2024.
Whoa, okay.
We still don't know the predicate for the subpoena, but they did go into a court and they got a subpoena. Now, by all appearances, the spying was politically motivated. The lawmakers who were spied on all are Republicans.
Okay.
Each one of us support President Trump, and we had valid questions about the outcomes of the 2020 election. What we also know is that no American should be spied on by their government because of their political beliefs, whether they're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. This should not happen.
I mean, that goes without saying. Again, if you're just joining us, breaking news, everyone. Nancy Pelosi, I'm going to put this on the screen. Pelosi is out. I know, ding dong. Cue the songs. I think, she's going out with a bang here in that there are still fundamental questions that need to be addressed. And I imagine there will be people that still want to hold her responsible for this because she promoted a lie that somehow she wasn't responsible for calling in the Capitol Hill police when in fact she was. And now, we do have tape, somehow that got leaked, of her admitting that. But yet still, as recently as this August, she's trying to claim, no, that wasn't the case, to the point where you actually have the guy who was in charge of the Capitol Hill police, who resigned the next day, Stephen Sund, saying, no, let me just set the record straight. I was asking you and asking you and asking you, and you were delaying and delaying and delaying. Why were they delaying? Oh, because they wanted this crowd together, because they wanted it to become a big, giant spectacle? Donald Trump, we have learned, again, through some of the reporting done by the Federalist, he actually did request that the National Guard go in there, and they couldn't get him in. Why? Because it wasn't following the proper channels and the proper protocol. And now it turns out they used this incident to do this wild investigation that was so far beyond the scope of anything that ever should have happened. I mean, listen to me, guys. This was right out of the Obama playbook. Obama, who went after my friend James Rosen, who I worked with at Fox, after Cheryl Atkinson, who I worked with at CBS News. That was perfectly fine in his regime, right? They knew how to do it. They kind of kept it all behind the scenes. I mean, Donald Trump, to his credit, or perhaps to his demise in some ways. I mean, this is why he gets in trouble. He just comes right out and says it, right? He's wearing his heart on the sleeve. You ask him a question, he actually answers it. Yeah. What do you think of Letitia James? I think she's a pretty horrible, vile person. He'll tell you right to your face. And then they say, well, gosh darn it, that's why they're going after her. That's why they're going after her. Forget about the fact that we all know what she did to him. Anyway, it's bad. And Nancy may be involved in that in some way, shape, or form. And I think that just because she's retiring, it's not going to exonerate her from any of this. We need to actually ask these questions, and we need to ask them really rather soon, because like I said, she's getting up there. I want to tell you about an organization I am proud to partner with. That would be freemarkets.org. You like the sound of that, right? Because actually, as you think about what went on after J6, and when we think about the craziness of the Obama and Biden administrations, what we have now realized is that they were using regulators, pressuring the regulators to then put pressure on banks to close accounts for certain industries and certain individuals and anybody basically whose politics they didn't like. So they effectively, by doing this, were trampling on our freedoms, the freedoms of American businesses, the freedoms of American citizens, and they were putting government in the business of punishing people, right, if you disagreed with the government. If we saw it on social media, and we saw it within the banking sector, and it was all because of regulators. So thankfully, President Trump is taking a stand, and I'm proud to stand with him and proud to stand with For Free Markets on this one, because we need some oversight here. He's taken a stand. He's put out an executive order. He's calling on these regulators to stop it. They were just regulators gone wild. That needs to end, okay? That needs to end, and he's demanding that it end. So Americans for Free Markets, myself, we're all happy, right? But we need more. I'm telling you. I'm a little bit greedy, but when it comes to this, I want to really, really ensure that we have the kind of freedom that we need. We urge Congress to follow his lead, but together, I think all of us need to establish some kind of framework so that you don't have regulators going wild in the future, because it could happen again. I mean, you saw his tweet the other day, or his Truth Social. He said, MAGA, we can't let this happen again. So we need to establish a national fair access standard to prevent services from being denied based on your politics, based on your social standing, based based on your religion, you name it. We need to bring clarity. We need to bring consistency, and I'll tell you, long overdue accountability to the financial regulation sector. So go check it out today at freemarkets.org. Get involved however you can. We can't have this kind of stuff. It's scary stuff, and it was bad. And hey, the media doesn't get it, right? They don't get it. Here's NBC the other day asking Lindsey Graham, who's one of the ones that got spied upon, logged. His phone records were logged. The metadata logged. Here he is being asked about it, and all the host can say is, what about Trump? What about Trump? What about Trump? Literally, that's all she says. She sounds like a broken record. Watch.
Do you think that crosses a line between the Justice Department being independent from the executive branch?
I think our Justice Department in the hands of Biden crossed every line there is to cross. I think within 3 days of announcing he was going to run for president in 2024, he did that in 2022.
But what about Trump?
He had
but
91
Senator, what about
indictments.
Trump?
I told you.
What about
Now, I think the grand jury is going to take care of this, but you didn't care any about this. You didn't care that Letitia James made up charges that no one's ever faced.
But Senator
Alvin
Biden
Bragg
never
made up
publicly
charges
called
no one
for
ever
Trump
faced.
to be indicted.
He had 90. Biden regretted that they didn't do it before the election. Jack Smith surveilled my phone records and 8 other senators. Jack Smith introduced his brief against Trump October the 24th before the 2024 election, violating every protocol just to politicize the election. So this may bother you that people are being held accountable. It doesn't bother me one damn bit.
Way to go, Lindsay. Hey, quick shout out. One of the reasons I started my financial research firm, 76 Research, was to fight back against this insanity, like, the cancel culture that was out there on steroids, because somehow if you had any conservative inkling whatsoever, like, they didn't even want to invest in you. I mean, think about that. Think about the ESG stuff that was going on and the DEI stuff, and you had to have so many, DEI people on your board of directors, and it was nuts, guys. Like, it was nuts. We were getting away from the meritocracy that has made us the great success we are as an American economy. So I recognize this, along with a dear friend who's spent decades on Wall Street as a stock picker, and he's really smart and he's really good. And I said, we need to do something, because people deserve independent research, independent and all the gobbledygook from the political atmosphere that we're dealing with, because, hey, there's great opportunities out there, really great opportunities out there. So we put together 76 Research. You can get the 76 Report newsletter. That's my newsletter. Just put in code word dollar. We got a good one on Mamdani today. Like, how do you invest in a world where the financial capital of the world, New York City, is now being run by a communist? Yeah, good question, right? Anyway, it's a great newsletter. I encourage you to go check it out. Use code word dollar today for that. But back to one Nancy Pelosi, because Nancy is leaving her party in kind of a bad state. That's not a great thing. 39 years in the business. Maybe she should have quit a long time ago. I would say this. The Democrat Party, as you know it, it's over. It's been over for a while. And this has been a long time sort of coming, right? I mean, again, need I reiterate that he calls himself a socialist, but let's be honest, he's a full-blown communist, is now the mayor of the world's most successful financial city. I wonder how long that's going to last. I'm telling you. Texas is looking good. They got their Texas Stock Exchange, all kinds of new technology that they're employing in that. Texas has 0% taxes. I'm telling you, Texas, Florida, it's all looking pretty good. Anyway, there was a C-SPAN caller that called in the other day onto their morning show. I think this was like last Thursday. And it was kind of a funny moment, because they go to their Democrat calling line. And this guy comes on. He's like, I've been a Democrat my whole life. But man, oh man, Nancy Pelosi needs to go. He got his wish. I mean, the anchor's like, whoa, wait a second. Isn't this the Democrat Party line? Here we go.
We go to Oklahoma, where Lawrence is on our line for Democrats. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I've been a Democrat all my life. I'm 78, and my folks were too. But this party has changed so damn much. It makes me sick. I'm going to move out of it. It's terrible, Schumer. He needs to be in a home. Take Pelosi with him.
Lawrence, who was the last Democrat you voted for?
He's like, are you sure you're dumb?
Pardon me?
Who was the last Democrat you voted for?
Last election. But like I said, I'm changing.
You voted for Kamala Harris?
Yeah, this is ridiculous,
Why did you
going around,
Why did you think Kamala Harris should win that election?
As a Democrat. I just a solid Democrat, like I told you, my folks were too, and I'm just fed up. I'm moving, I don't know, independent or something's got to happen. I just wanted to make a comment, and thank you.
That's Lawrence in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost so many. Why else do you think Donald Trump won? He got the popular vote. He got the Electoral College. I know that this week's elections were challenging and that we saw Democrats come out of the woodwork like you wouldn't believe. But, he wasn't on the ballot. Unfortunately, that's one of the cautionary things I'm just going to say. He is such a star, such a uber star that it makes it hard in that, people aren't as motivated unless he's on. And I think we all need to stay motivated because the alternative is, God help us, right? If the Democrats actually take control of the House and the Senate at midterms, because then you're going to be looking at, a whole bunch of commies that want to take him down in a really scary way. And at that point, you're saying, okay, USA is 250 years old. Like, has it run its course? I don't believe it has. I think we have so much more to do and so much more growth ahead. But that's why it's really critical that you have the right people in office. And right now, we have a Democrat Party that has just disintegrated into nothingness under the leadership of the likes of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who that caller believes should be in a home. And, as he said, take Nancy with you. Well, Nancy decided to go first. Chucky, we're still waiting on you. Watch this.
The old guard has been repudiated, and the radicals are taking over the Democratic Party. We have evidence now every day. Yesterday, Jared Golden announced he would not be running for re-election in the state of Maine. He's a moderate, and he has no place in his party anymore. And then this morning, you saw the headline. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi has now announced her retirement this morning. That is a very important sign that I hope that you all will delve into. Even the famous San Francisco liberal is not far left enough for the neo-Marxists. We commend her for her services. We all do, everyone who serves in Congress, but there should be a lot written about that.
There should be a lot written about that. I think that you've got a new party now that's been taken over by these radicals, but it happened because of Nancy. She wasn't really a liberal if you think about it. I mean, hey, she and Paul yucking it up there in their mansion in San Francisco, where they had like big gates around them. Of course, apparently not big enough because somebody still got in, unfortunately for Paul. But the point being that they live a very different life than the people that she is purporting to represent. And that caught up with her over time, just like it's caught up with it did catch up with Hillary Clinton, like it did catch up with Kamala Harris. It was sort of this, let them eat cake. The piece of my mind, I was looking in the comments earlier and you were talking about, well, hey, maybe she can go eat some really expensive ice cream right now in her retirement. I'll never forget that. During COVID, like people are terrified, right? They didn't have anything. They couldn't go to work. They weren't getting paid. And Nancy Pelosi was like, look at the bright side. Hey, you can just sit home and eat ice cream all day. And she pulls open her freezer and you see, I think it was all Talenti or Haagen-Dazs. It might have been Talenti, which is even more expensive than Haagen-Dazs. Ice cream in there, which goes for like $10, $12 a little carton. And it's like, whoa, Nancy, like you're out of it. Like people don't have an ice, like a freezer full of super expensive ice cream. Like that's your own crazy world that you live in, which is a wonderful world, I'm sure. But that's not America. And you don't get it. And the difference between her and Trump is he doesn't live in that world either of the everyday American, not at all, right? He's a billionaire and has more money than Nancy, but he knows what it's like for whatever reason to be up against it. Like he just gets it. He gets it. And he understands how hard it is for people. And so there's an empathy there that he emotes. And I think people responded to in droves while Nancy, let them eat cake, Marie Antoinette, is out there saying, have some Talenti. And the other one, Hillary Clinton's like, oh, they're just a bunch of deplorables. Deplorables. I mean, for goodness sakes. So they lost it. It was theirs to lose, as this guy on TikTok so articulately said. I love this. As Mamdani was winning, he took to his cell phone and he explained it all rather brilliantly in less than a minute. Watch.
Congratulations, Democrats. You lost your party to socialism. This fucking guy, Mamdani, won in about 4 minutes. You can take a look at the districts. The Bronx, this one's a fucking wrap. You lost your party to socialism because you pandered to the radicals on the left.
Okay, you pander to the radicals on the left while not leading. I would add to this, you lost your party to socialism because you had a very bad case of TDS. You had a very, very bad case of TDS. And when TDS takes over your life and it becomes a terminal illness, you can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, let's go back to California politicians like the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. Oh, I love this clip. I don't have it with me today, but I'll try and bring it up maybe tomorrow. She has a great soundbite where this is like, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago. She's saying, we can't be the welfare system for Mexico. She's not wrong. But suddenly, something changed on the way to the forum, right? Suddenly we became the welfare system for Mexico, right out there in California, if you would. And that was perfectly fine suddenly with the Democrats, because I guess they figured, hey, we bring in enough people at some point, if we have enough of these people here, then we can start getting them to vote for us. And when they vote for us, then we will be all set. You know, this is part of what Mamdani is trying to do. For example, in the city of New York, he's saying, and in his speech, I won't play it for you, but he was like, oh, you know, we're a nation of immigrants, we're a city of immigrants. And by the way, I don't dispute that. Heck, my whole family, a whole bunch of Irish riffraff, right? Came here during the potato famine. Listen, like, I love that, right? And my husband's family, he's Irish and Italian. And when his family came here, look, they spoke Italian at home because it was the only language they knew, but they wouldn't let the kids speak it because the idea was you're going to assimilate. We were going to be a melting pot. And how'd you get ahead in America? By embracing the fact that you were American. American first, right? And then, you know, it's wonderful. We're a melting pot. We have all these wonderful different cultures. I'm not saying anything against immigration, but heck, can we not do it the legal way? Like we have for centuries? Like, why did it have to change? And now Mamdani saying he has no interest in cooperating with the feds. Okay, maybe he can do that. Maybe that's his right to do that, but he certainly can't impede him. And he's talking about impeding him just like Brandon Johnson and Pritzker out there in Illinois are doing. Well, that's going to cause all kinds of chaos. Mind you, big, big problems. We're talking like, I mean, you want to go back to the Lincoln era? We're going back to the Lincoln era because I'm sorry. I mean, I'd like not to. Let's call it George Wallace for now, okay? Alabama, 1960 something. They're going to integrate the schools. Governor of Alabama doesn't want to do it, so what happens? They send in the National Guard and they force him to do so. Donald Trump saying, listen, if he tries to confiscate people's property, if he tries to say, well, I'm going to tax you because you live in a white neighborhood, that would be racist and against the Constitution. Donald Trump's not having it. Take a peek.
Florida gets 1/3 of what New York gets in terms of the numbers. Why don't you give us those numbers?
Yeah, well,
that's what.
Mr. President, your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zoran Mamdani, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zoran Mamdani.
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you look at the per capita.
He's not wrong. He's pointing out that the federal government, federal taxpayer dollars go to New York. And so We don't need to send any federal tax dollars to New York if they're not actually complying with policy. It is actually congressional policy, right? I mean, ICE is a charter of Congress, for goodness sakes. I mean, these people are in a wacko world where they think that the United States doesn't matter anymore and they can be their own little island, whether it's New York City, whether it's the city of Chicago, whether it's the state of California. They think that they don't belong to part of the bigger picture. Well, they do. And you know what? We got a little thing called the Commerce Clause that can make certain of it. A few other things too, like the Supremacy Clause. But let's go with commerce for now. You just can't do that, okay? And so if ICE is in charge of making sure that if people are here in this country and they have committed a crime, then we need to actually start a deportation process, do we not? I mean, when did this suddenly become like this? Because of TDS. And this is what I'm telling you. Nancy Pelosi is out. Her entire party is out because of their TDS. And instead of recognizing the problems that we're facing everyday Americans, instead of recognizing that factories were shutting down and people were losing their job and their standard of living was deteriorating in real time, she's out there telling you to sit home and eat ice cream, Talenti ice cream at $12 a pint. That is the problem. All while simultaneously trying to think about her own political hide and her future, saying, oh, well, we'll just keep bringing people in, millions of people in, we'll give them all this stuff, and then they'll vote for Democrats. We'll create dependency. There was a method to the madness, as Stephen Miller so articulately explained this week. Watch.
This was not a loophole. The Biden administration, Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, devised a scheme to fly illegal aliens into the country and then to escort them en masse across the border by the millions and to give them something known as parole, which gives them a work permit, which gives them a social security number, which gives them access to the voting booth. This was the plan all along, to get them here illegally so they can get free government benefits, get hooked to welfare, and be able to participate in American elections. This was an attack on democracy by the Democrat Party. It's the same attack that we see, Sean, when you have California, a sanctuary state, that is refusing to turn over even illegal alien criminals to ICE. So these are illegal aliens in California who have been arrested by California police, by California law enforcement for serious crimes. They are refusing to hand these criminal illegal aliens over to ICE. Instead, they're freeing them back into the cities to offend and offend again. By any definition, what California is doing is criminal. It is a violation of our laws. It is one of the most heinous things that I have seen.
Okay, so there you have it. And he blames Nancy Pelosi for that. And so I'd also be curious if there could be any kind of investigation into that, because isn't that sort of fundamentally wrong? Like if you're saying, okay, we're going to deliberately defy ICE, we're going to deliberately defy Congress, and we're going to encourage people to come here illegally and then give them all this stuff, you know, in the name of being altruistic and humanitarian, et cetera. If you're deliberately doing that as an actual policy or as an actual strategy, then that would be, I would think, kind of just in violation of the law, given that the law stands that you're supposed to be backing up ICE. I mean, if you don't like the law, as Kirsty Noem so articulately said, go out and change it, guys. But her job at DHS is to enforce the law. And ICE's job is to enforce the law. And again, you go back 20, 25 years, and you had Democrats that would sound like fascists today. I mean, I was looking at a speech by Bill Clinton and another by Barack Obama. Barack Obama deported more illegal migrants than any other president in history. So they once believed in this until they were like, oh, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I think that we can actually maybe get something out of this. And that's what's so fundamentally messed up. So we've got Nancy Pelosi. I'm going to put this again on the title. Nancy Pelosi, if you're just joining us, she is out. Party is a mess. It's like the understatement of the year. Oh my goodness. You know, I just got to say, like, I could see it in real time. I was saying this over and over and over again. And look, I have no desire to see the Democrats win, but I am a journalist. I am covering this. I kind of, you know, at least would like to see a fair fight. And I'm like, really? Biden? Like, that's the best you got? And Kamala, oh my gosh. So here's the answer. Going back, they should have primaried Biden. No brainer, okay? Look, they primaried Carter. We got Reagan. Maybe that's what they were afraid of. But they definitely needed to primary one Joe Biden, and they didn't. And then don't forget, if they had primaried him, you would have had all the ladies on The View absolutely freaking out because it had to go to Kamala. I mean, in the name of DEI, it had to go to Kamala. Who, by the way, says she's not done. Is this like her paycheck? Is that how she like makes money? I'm just wondering, you just keep raising money saying, I'm going to run. She spent more money than any other politician in history. And wow, talking about nothing to show for it. Anyway, the party is a mess. It was Nancy who had to call her buddy Joe Biden and say, Joe, it's time. You're out. You're done. And she had to force his resignation. I wonder if he's getting the last laugh right now. I would say that this party is so screwed over because, as Mike Johnson said, it has succumbed to the legs of a bunch of socialists. Just look at AOC. Oh my gosh, was she ever gloating? Just the other night when Mamdani took New York. Here we go.
What I think is so impressive about what Zohran Mamdani accomplished tonight, as well as the entire movement of New Yorkers that came out to vote for him, is that he had to not just defeat a Republican, he had to defeat a Republican and the old guard of the Democratic Party at the same time. He was fighting a war on two fronts and not just one. And he still won resoundingly. And I think the message that sends is that the Democratic Party cannot last much longer by denying the future, by trying to undercut our young, by trying to undercut a next generation of diverse and upcoming Democrats that have the parties, the actual party, our actual electorate and voters support.
Okay. I should have warned you about her voice. Maybe that's just me. It's my singing background, I get like nails on the chalkboard. It's tough. We all have our thing, right? As my kids like to say, there's a little tism in there somewhere. Anyway, when I hear her speak, it is like nails on the chalkboard. So I should have warned you, or at least reminded myself. Nancy Pelosi is now out, just hours after AOC said that. So AOC's gloating, saying, look, there's a new party here and we've come along and we're taking hold. And you know what? To a certain extent, she's not wrong in that the Democrat Party didn't actually champion values that would help people. I mean, AOC's certainly not championing them. Don't kid yourself. I mean, this is a woman who is pretty darn clueless on the economy, who turned away Amazon when they were offering like tens of thousands of jobs that would have paid $100K plus a year. She turned that away. Oh, Queens doesn't need Amazon. I mean, she just doesn't get it. I'm sorry. Just because you're a Democrat doesn't need you need to be stupid. I've said this forever. Like, economics doesn't need to be political. I realize it gets that way, but hello, you need jobs. Oh, wait a second. The communists, the socialists, they don't actually need private sector money. Don't forget. Right? They don't want private sector money. They only want government money. So they want to tax and tax and tax anybody who's got anything until they're blue in the face, right? To take it over, to take it back and redistribute it to all their friends and family as they see fit. Hey, I'm sorry. This is history. I was a history major, early US, but I get it. Go around the world. I've spent time in Venezuela. Venezuela went from having the best standard of living in all of Latin America to the worst. And I can document the day. It was my first day at Goldman Sachs. And guess what? We were trading Latin American debt, specifically Venezuela, Argentina, Mexico, and Brazil. And Hugo Chavez came into power and we were trying to get a meeting with him. And I think we eventually did. I was not part of the team that went down and met with him. I later tried to as a CBS News reporter. So I got the privilege of going to hear all his speeches. And sí, yo hablo español. AOC does not, but I speak Spanish. And so I got to go down and hear over and over and over again Hugo Chavez tell us how it was the fault of the white Europeans. And because the white Europeans stole from the people hundreds and hundreds of years ago and effectively, enslaved them. Well, it is only the right of the people to take all that back. And so what he did was he took everything, confiscated property, you name it, golf courses even, which is kind of funny because I was thinking about Letitia James trying to get her hands on the Bedminster golf course, or the New York golf course, anyway, of Donald Trump when she could. I mean, it was like Venezuela all over again. So he would sit there and say, and he'd go on for hours. I never did get an interview with him because every time he'd speak, he'd run out the clock and there was never time for an interview. But this communist convinced the people that it was the fault of the white Europeans and he was going to take everything back. And believe me, he did. And guess what now? Like, Venezuela is devastated. People are starving in Venezuela, which is a weird thing, right, in today's day and age. But they are so devastated. And Chavismo has ruined that country. And by the way, you know, we're onto it. Pete Hegseth's onto it. Venezuela, good luck. There's something called the Monroe Doctrine. And we're not going to stand for the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians hanging out in Caracas and in Venezuela, possibly threatening us. And we're also not going to stand for anybody sending illicit, illegal, good, you know what I'm talking about, into the United States of America. Donald Trump means business. This is his second term. And you've seen the result of all those ships going up. But this is who these people admire. No joke. They like the Hugo Chavez or the Nicolas Maduros of the world. Here's Jasmine Crockett. She's the other one. She wants to run for president of the United States. So does AOC. Oh, this will be fun to watch. Get your popcorn ready, folks.
Ted Cruz would be ideal. He would be ideal to run against. I mean, he would be ideal. I would love to challenge Ted Cruz. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with y'all. I'm gonna just keep it real. This is the first time I've ever said that publicly, right? So y'all get in here. But let me tell you something. I am so concerned for our country right now with everything that we're experiencing. I just went through a litany of things before.
Yeah. You're really concerned. Hey, I am just gonna go back to this. Donald Trump wouldn't have won if the Democrats had been doing their job, if they had been looking out for everyday people. I mean, I'm not a union gal. Believe me, I think unions do a lot of damage. And, as a free market capitalist, I could never be. But I understand the predicament that a lot of union workers are facing. And think about the fact that you had all these union leaders and union voters, I mean, the head of the UAW, right, getting up and speaking at the RNC. Donald Trump gave him a platform. He said, I get it. You need to be heard. And you think about all the union workers, and they overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. It makes sense because the Kamala Harrises of the world, they don't get. Hillary Clinton doesn't get. Nancy Pelosi does not get what your average American is up against. And in a time when we had mass inflation approaching near double digits under Biden, people were hurting. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And you had a guy who didn't seem to know what day it was, and 85-year-old Nancy there telling you to eat more Talenti ice cream. It didn't work. They got too far away from where they were historically. They were supposed to represent the working class, and all of a sudden they didn't represent the working class. They represented, Tom, Dick, and Harry, or I should say Jose, Juan, and Joaquin coming over the border, who were coming illegally and not part of the system, were getting free stuff and therefore acting as a drag on the system. I mean, you can have legal immigration. Donald Trump's talked about a big, beautiful red carpet, right? Let's do it the right way. Heck, he married 2 immigrants, for goodness sakes. Wife number 1 and wife number 3. Okay, he's got a thing for the Eastern Europeans. Beautiful women. Very, very organized. I mean, I'm making a big generalization, but most of my Eastern European friends are very organized. I admire them tremendously. Yes, and quite beautiful. So I'm just saying, this isn't an anti-immigrant thing. This is a, hey, let's do this in a way that's actually good for America thing. And Nancy Pelosi failed on that front because she had a different agenda, as Stephen Miller so articulately explained. And now you got this nut job, and I'm telling you, he's a nut job. He's a lying nut job. He couldn't get into my own alma mater, Columbia University. And his dad worked there. Hey, I didn't have any parents working there. I had to do it the old-fashioned way. I actually had to really try to get into that school. This guy, he had daddy working there. He put down that he was African American. Check that off on his box. I guess, like, literally, could you say? I mean, he just became an American 7 years ago, incidentally, because, you know, they had the home in Uganda. And he's got a dad who, like, must have been like this with Chavez. He's like, you know, the definition of Chavismo, and believes it's the white Europeans that have destroyed society instead of creating the greatest economy on the planet. Right? We've lifted more people out of poverty in the United States of America than anywhere else in the world. And yet this idiot says, hey, we're not going to have any more Donald Trumps. We're going to make sure we choke them off before they happen. I'm curious to know how that's going to go. What are you going to do? You just get rid of our freedom of speech, First Amendment? Yeah, it's been tried before. I lived it.
And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one.
Ah! Okay. You see where I'm going? The communists, they say you don't have a right to earn all the money that you want to earn. There's got to be a cutoff somewhere. I mean, he's making $1 million in New York City. I got news for him. You know, since 2020, they've lost like 20,000 million-dollar earners. There were like 50 some odd thousand people earning $1 million in New York City. Then 2020 happened and they realized, we can go elsewhere. You know what? It's cheaper to live somewhere else, like say Texas, and they're not going to actually charge me $1 gazillion in taxes. Mamdani, they've already got 16%. If you factor in local and state in New York, well, I'll tell you what, he wants to move it up another 2 percentage points. So you're going to be paying like, was it like 17, 18% in New York for the privilege of living in New York City where you can't even get on the subway or send your kids to public school? I don't think so. That's what socialism and communism does. Everyone's going to leave that can. Thank God I sold my place in 2018. Wouldn't want to live there at all right now. My girls are going to be turning 16, and they talked about maybe going to New York City for their birthday, and I'm like, sorry, honey, been there, done that. But Mom, we want to see the Rockefeller Center and the tree light up. I'm like, okay, you know, I used to work at 30 Rock, and this was like the worst time of year because I'd have to deal with all these crowds of people at 30 Rock. Just trying to get through all that was quite, I'm like, you know what, when you grow up, if you want, hopefully you won't want to work at 30 Rock, but you can have that experience. I avoid the city like the plague. Seriously. And all my media friends, would you come in and be on our set and do something? I'm like, nah, you don't understand. I really do not like New York City at all. And now I definitely don't like it with Mamdani in charge. But this is a problem, really, for the Democrat Party. I think in some ways it's good. It's just that it's more of a high beta situation, right? Because we run the risk as a country if this stuff catches on, and I don't think it will, but if it were to catch on, then we'd have all kinds of problems that we would be confronting. Hopefully that is not the case. Hopefully we just win all day long, because when you have nut jobs like this lady, ooh, I'm going to it, Letitia James outside the courthouse, trying to somehow insinuate that this is a political vendetta against her. I'm like, hey, honey, where were you? Where were you? You were trying to bankrupt him. You wanted his golf course, just like Hugo Chavez took over golf courses in Caracas.
But this is not about me. This is about all of us. And about a justice system which has been weaponized. A justice system which has been used as a tool of revenge. This justice system which has been used as a tool of revenge.
Yes, just in case we didn't hear it the first time.
And a weapon against those individuals who simply did their job and who stood up for the rule of law.
We stand with you!
Oh boy, Tishy, you know, can you imagine a world where these people are in charge? That would not be good. That would definitely not be good. I mean, a world where, people who just want to bankrupt you because of your political beliefs and they're afraid that you might run for political office and they go out there and they try and take you down. Oh, this is my favorite one. We're going to seize his assets. We're going to get it all. Ooh, she wanted Trump Tower.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Yeah, like I told you. Okay, so that's where we are. I would say this. We did have some election losses. We didn't have Donald Trump on the ballot. He is sort of the one-man show, right? I think that, he tries to surround himself with a lot of great people, and he certainly does, but he has the charisma and the personality to really get people out to vote, and we didn't have that this week. But it is concerning. I want to just show you something from Polymarket because it's just worth paying attention to, and I can't be completely Pollyanna here. If I look at this, I don't like it, all right? Because in the last couple months, we've increasingly seen the likelihood of the Democrat Party coming in and winning the House going up and up. And of course, with Prop 50 that they were able to get through in California so that they get 5 more seats. That's part of this. It's critical. And we have been successful in terms of the redistricting that needed to happen in the state of Texas, which is why Crockett's going to be out of a job and she's looking either to take on Cruz or maybe the presidency. This is a concern, and I think we need to be smart about it and we need to be focused on it because what we're up against is something entirely different than really anything we've ever seen. I think the media is not blameless in all of this. The media has contributed to the downfall, frankly, of the Democrat Party. I mean, it wasn't what they intended, of course, but because they kept spouting all these lies, Americans lost faith in those institutions and consequently gravitated over to newer personalities and talent and newer mechanisms by which this content is delivered. Hello. Look at me right here on YouTube. Reminder, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Make a comment. I do read them all. When I look at CBS right now, I'm encouraged that they have somebody like Barry Weiss coming in who left the New York Times because of the New York Times bias and is trying to remake that newsroom. But I'm also just a realist. I don't think you're going to get there. I'm sorry, Barry, love you, but you know what? You've got some institutional left-wing bias that's been there going all the way back to Watergate. I mean, and they don't have a lot of spring chickens there. What is Leslie Stahl, 87, 89? I mean, my friend Sharon Alfonsi, she's a good egg. She's from Mississippi and Texas, so, she thinks differently perhaps than the rest. She's over at 60 Minutes, and she's a little older than me, I think. So, let's just say when you're the kid and, you've been doing this for decades, it's a little weird, but she is the kid. Leslie is very much up there. I don't know how old Scott Pelley is, but he's knocking on Leslie's decade for sure. You got some older people there and they run the show. So how does Barry Weiss, who's 40, come in and change things? She's going to have to fire a lot of people. Some of these people are being fired already. I mean, Colbert, he was already told, you're not getting a renewal on that contract. I mean, for goodness sakes, you're losing millions, tens of millions of dollars a year. You really think you're going to stay in business like that? In a new day and age when all of this can be done so much more cheaply? I don't think so. And now Colbert, I think he wants his job back. He went on a podcast this week and started insisting that he's conservative. Yeah. He says, well, I'm a lot more conservative than some people think. Oh, buddy, you're really getting desperate, aren't you? You must need that money.
I share those feelings with the audience. And they laugh or they don't laugh, and there's a sense of community there. And the demographics of these shows are interesting too. It's about a third. It's about a third Republicans, third Democrats, third Independents. You'd think, old, people perceive me as this sort of lefty figure. I think I'm more conservative than people think. I just happen to be talking about a a government in extremis.
Yeah.
And so what I'm giving you is my reaction video to the day. and my reaction video is like, is like the Scream.
Yeah.
In a way. but with jokes.
Well, with jokes, yeah.
And so that makes people perceives me as more left necessarily than I am, because I'm not sure what other reaction would be an honest one. It's hard to have a balanced reaction to the idea of troops on street of a city that actually is not undergoing an invasion. Is any other reaction honest other than to
horror? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but jokes about the
I'm
horror.
sorry. I think you just did yourself in with that one, Stevie. Like, you're like, I really am conservative, except how can you not have this reaction? So that would kind of tell me that maybe you're not so conservative. I mean, I think it's kind of a natural thing to want to have safe cities. And if the local politicians can't keep people safe, then, hey, isn't that the job of the government? Like, what do you need government for? Hey, live free or die, right? Libertarian New Hampshire, roots here. You really don't need government for much except for, the basic necessity of keeping people safe, right? Let's go back to, the right to pursuit of happiness and our Constitution. And if you can't do that because you live in a lawless land like the likes of Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, trust me, you don't have the same opportunities, or the inner city of Baltimore. No, right? So maybe that's a time when it makes sense, or Washington, D.C., for the federal law enforcement to say, okay, state, you're not doing your job. We need to make sure that we're protecting all the people of this land. So the fact that he doesn't get that tells me he's definitely not conservative, not at all. But you keep trying, Stephen. I guess the millions of dollars you're getting paid are really important. You must not have invested very well.
The horror.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't,
which is
like
yes.
one. And so those two things together, or those three things together, is the beginning of a case of why these shows should exist.
My thanks to our friends at MRC for that. You don't think it's kind of beneath you, Stephen, to be trying to pretend you're a conservative right now after all the things that you have said? Like I said, you probably just didn't invest that well. Charlotte, I will talk about investing in just a moment. Stephen Colbert is not the only one that is potentially out of a gig in the unemployment line over at CBS. There's another anchor who's reported to make anywhere from $10 to $15 million a year, which I would say is $9 to $14 million too much for her, especially given that they are in last place at CBS News. She does happen to be a very good friend, the very best friend of one Oprah Winfrey. Her name is Gayle King, and she suddenly read about herself in the papers the other day. You see, Variety had the exclusive saying, Gayle's out, her contract's up in 26, and Barry Weiss doesn't want to pay this much. I mean, why would anybody want to pay that much? I mean, like, let's it's just business, okay? It's not personal. I mean, it is kind of interesting that both Stephen and Gayle happen to be like besties with Oprah, but we'll leave that aside. Let's just assume it's not personal. It's just business. Would you really pay an anchor of like a show that is not doing that well that much money? What's she bringing in for you? Other than, a relationship with Oprah, but I don't see Oprah on the show every week. Maybe if Oprah will do a spot once a week, I'm not sure Oprah could get anybody to watch either. I mean, just think about how much money she was paid, allegedly $2 million, according to the New York Times, to do that little spot on YouTube with Kamala Harris. We get more views, like, in a day than they did in a month, okay? Like, that did not go very well. So I'm not sure that Oprah's the answer either. Like, this kind of media is just done. It's over. It's passé, and good. But Gayle found out the hard way by reading Variety that she was out of a gig, reportedly, and she was asked about it by TMZ. TMZ, who just happens to be standing outside the CBS entrance, she encouraged them to get a picture of the actual address. I'm not sure why. But anyway, TMZ, you wonder if it was a setup, waiting for her. Gayle knew the reporter, and then she stops and talks and responds to the Variety article saying, Gayle King expected to depart CBS Mornings amid CBS News overhaul. Believe me, they need an overhaul. And I don't think the overhaul still, I'm sorry, is going to work. But here's Gayle's response.
very, very shocking to see those reports yesterday. We're all wondering if you might be going in another direction. Do you have an answer as of yet?
No, all I can say is this. From what I'm being told inside this building, take a shot, 524 West 52nd Street. All
There
I've
you
been
go.
told by everybody in this building is that they want me here. They like the job I'm doing. I like the job I'm doing. I'll say this. I like the job and the people that I work with. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you about it. But what I'm hearing in the building is not what I'm reading in the press. And what I'm not going to do is negotiate in the media. Not doing that.
All right. Do you have an idea like what things might look like in May if the show's going in another direction?
I have no idea.
No idea.
All I know is I am here. I am here and glad to be here.
I'm happy to see that, Ms.
Bye,
King.
Tiffany.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, so she doesn't seem to know which end is up there. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't want to negotiate in public, but apparently she's having to do so, or maybe she'll just be out of a job. They're talking about maybe giving her some kind of incubated production stream, so I don't know, she can do a podcast. Here's the problem. All right, I'm just going to level with you. A lot of people in this business rely very heavily on producers and scripts and questions that are written for them by a bunch of 22-year-olds. And that's just kind of how the business is. And so you get somebody who kind of has some kind of commanding presence, maybe on camera. Often they don't. In fact, I think that the industry is filled with producers that handpick talent because they think they'll be good, or maybe they're just friends with somebody, but they really don't understand what makes a show work. I'm going to tell you what makes a show work. And it has nothing to do with looks. It has nothing to do with, what you wear or any of that. Maybe that helps on the margin. I know my dad, every time we'd go through the channels and he'd click through the channels and we'd get to Univision and boom, he'd stop because the ladies on Univision, let me tell you. And he doesn't speak any Spanish. So it can help on the margin, but it's not going to sustain something. So you don't need the looks. What you need is some kind of genuine passion for what you're doing. And that's very, very rare. I mean, I look at that boring guy on CNN that's being paid $15 million. That's, again, $14 million too much. Anderson Cooper. There's no passion there. There's no excitement there. And then you get people, I'm going to take a shot at Chris Cuomo, whose brother... the president called a thug and just lost the election to Mamdani, and he's on some new network, and maybe he's animated, but there's not a lot of intelligence there. So you need somebody who's passionate about what they do, who's intelligent, and who actually kind of lives, sleeps, eats, and breathes this stuff. If you're in the news business, you got to really be in the news business. I joke about my special talent, opera trivia. Just dare to try and beat me. The other special talent is having an enormous recall for every soundbite for the last 20 years since I've been in the business, right? Anything I've ever watched, somehow gets logged in my memory. Yeah. And that's why sometimes you see me play sound bites from the past, again, because I want to remind you guys of the things that have happened. So you need to understand what's been going on, right, in order to understand the present and hopefully the future. You also need to understand what the other side is saying in order to really have an articulated viewpoint on what you believe. I think it was Joan Didion, the author, who was once asked why she wrote. And she wrote this brilliant essay on why I write. And I remember reading this and thinking, it's a lot of what I do. Why do I do this every day? The kids joke, when mom's completely senile. When I get to be Nancy Pelosi's form of senile, you can just put me up here in the studio and I'll just keep going and going and going. And it might be the one thing that keeps me going because I am passionate about it and I do love it. And I think that you need that sort of baseline. And that's very rare to find. And then sure, voice and personality and all these other things help, but you need that. And what they have at CBS are a bunch of people that read a prompter. And a bunch of people that read a prompter that was written by, some other producers behind the scenes that maybe or maybe not really know what's going on. And then you get a bunch of questions. I see it all the time on CNN. In fact, I think Anderson Cooper's been guilty of this. They have another woman whose mom was Miss America, who's just a train wreck, because you can tell. Like, somebody will say something, and they answer a question, and then the anchor comes back asking the exact same thing that the person just answered. And I'm always like, are you not listening? Short answer, no, they're not listening. They're reading their questions in the prompter. And so they don't hear what somebody actually says. It's wild. Like, the industry's filled with that. Okay, so you don't need to pay them that much money. I mean, Barry Weiss is figuring that out. Do I really need to pay a prompter reader this kind of money? Short answer, no. Okay, but can Gayle King make it on her own? Could she go off script and just host a podcast and talk to people? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if she's talented enough to do that. I don't think she is. I mean, I've seen the show a few times, and I'm probably being unfair. I don't have any commercials in this show, guys, so, occasionally you need to fix the lip gloss. If you're listening on audio, you really need to tune into the video. By the way, go check me out on Spotify. I'm going to put that in the show notes again, because we're up to I think we're up to almost 15,000. So, hey, we are getting there. We are getting there. That's really important. You got to start somewhere. I really appreciate everything that you are doing, certainly on the Spotify front. If you could also leave a review, 5 stars only, please, that would be awesome. Really, really, really awesome. But I think that, the reality for someone like Gayle or anybody else over there at CBS, Norah O'Donnell's another example. I mean, I can't imagine her off prompter. I think she's a very nice person. What happens when the prompter goes down? What you got? I've always said, all I can ever be on TV is myself, right? That's all I got. So I can't sort of read something and pretend to be someone else. I can only be who I am, which means you have to know who you are. Going back to what Joan Didion in the Why I Write essay, she said one of the reasons that she writes is because she wants to know what she thinks about something. And I think about news events, and sometimes there's stories I don't cover on this show because I don't have a passionate response to them. I mean, the Blake Lively, whatever his name, Baldoni story, you lost me on that one. I mean, I really didn't care, right? So I tried, because the story was apparently enormously popular. But if I don't really love it, I can't actually convey any kind of enthusiasm or passion to you. Therefore, why should you care about it? If I don't care about it, why would you care about it? And so a lot of what I like to do is look out at the full universe of stories and say, what is it that hits me? And if it's not hitting me right away, I'll dig deeper and do more research and more research and more research to find something that makes something relevant. I'm not sure that the talent, quote unquote talent, at CBS does this. You know what? I'm gonna say something positive about somebody that you probably don't like. Rachel Maddow. I don't think, obviously I don't agree with anything Rachel Maddow believes, and I think that actually she often takes people in a very dangerous direction. So as a journalist, she's not there. But as a communicator, she's got something going on. And it's not the looks, okay? I mean, she wears the same black suit every single day, and I don't even know if there's any makeup on her. But the point is, I do believe she believes in what she's talking about. And so there's a passion that comes through. And while it may not be for you or me, it's real. And that genuine sort of desire to convey a message is what separates people in this industry right now. So the old guard, legacy media, they're reading a prompter. They really don't care. They're phoning it in. They don't know what they think. I mean, heck, Jake Tapper, for goodness sakes, one day he's telling us Biden's brilliant. And then the next day he's got a book out on the media's failure to recognize how off he was. And I'm like, hey, you really don't believe in anything except perhaps the almighty dollar. Has to be more than money to succeed in this. And I consider myself a success thanks to you guys, because we're celebrating over 1 million subs here on this channel. We need some work on Spotify. Don't forget to go and check out my Spotify channel. But this is the new reality. A very new reality. And unfortunately, if you're working at a place like CBS or NBC or ABC, you're surrounded by a team of producers that all have their views. And so you get too many cooks in the kitchen. And before you know it, you're running an interview with the President of the United States on 60 Minutes, the first you've gotten in like 5 or 6 years. And when he says the important part about why the shutdown is still going on, you delete it. Now, I don't know if that was Nora that deleted it. It could have been a producer. It could have been multiple producers. We don't really know, but we don't have the transparency into any of this because it's such a top-heavy organization with a bunch of prompter readers that don't really understand or really care. And this is the segment I'm talking about here when he spoke on CBS on Sunday night and said something important, but you didn't hear it.
Give us an extension. We'll work it out. They've lost their way. They become crazed lunatics. And all they have to do, Nora, is
This
say,
is what they aired.
Let's vote.
So Hakeem...
Senate Democrats say they will vote to reopen the government if Republicans agree to extend subsidies for over 20 million Americans who use Obamacare for their health insurance.
All we're saying, give us an extension. We'll work it out. They've lost their way. They become crazed lunatics. And all they have to do, Nora, is say, let's vote. And you can open, the economy could open up during our interview.
Is there something you can
Maybe
do,
it
though?
did.
Is there something you
All I
can
can
do to bring this
is
to
give
an
the
end?
facts. Here's what I can't do.
This is important, okay?
I can't give them $1.5 trillion so that they can give welfare to people that came into our country illegally, so that prisoners and that people from mental institutions and people that are drug dealers get vast amounts of money for health care. That I can't.
That he can't do. But that wasn't in there. They edited that out. I mean, you'd think they'd learn their lesson. I mean, maybe they thought it was innocuous enough. I actually think it's kind of a vital part of the entire story, right? Why is the shutdown still going on? Because there's $1.5 trillion that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer put in back in the days of 2020 after COVID, and it was supposed to be there temporarily to help people, and now it's still there, and we can't afford it, and it's going to all these hospitals for the treatment of illegals. Peace of my mind. You're right. I mean, peace of my mind pointing out what would have happened if Trump hadn't released this entire interview. And Donald Trump thankfully did. It was actually really kind of great. I mean, they put it out on the White House feed. They're like, here, watch it all in full so you can see the entire thing. And it's like, thank you. Thank you, because we've been unfortunately manipulated with the news industry that's like paint by numbers. They have their little, okay, this is our thesis. Trump is bad. Kamala is good. So now we're going to feed the Trump is bad. And MRC has done this research, otherwise known as Newsbusters, and they've got like 99% horrible coverage of Donald Trump leading up to the election and 99% amazing coverage of one Kamala Harris. And then you think back to that infamous interview that Bill Whitaker, again, I used to work with Bill. I can't really tell you. I mean, it's like wallpaper, right? Like so many of their talent are like wallpaper. They don't really feel like they stand for anything. And I think in this new industry and in this new world, oh, thank God I'm here, you have to stand for something. You have to have some conviction and you have to have some passion. Otherwise, you get editors doing all kinds of things to your interviews, and before you know it, you're making Kamala Harris sound like, woo, she's one smart cookie, and we know she's not, remember? Rather amazing how the mainstream media can edit these questions to make some people look better. The original.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
And they edited.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Yeah, version 2 was better. Right? So somebody deserves an Emmy Award for actually making this woman sound like she's really smarter than she is. Kamala Harris was not an articulate individual, certainly. I don't know her in her private life, but certainly in her public life. And I think Americans caught on to that, despite the media's attempt to massage her and to make her seem like something that she really wasn't. And I mean that, something that she really wasn't. I don't know who Kamala Harris is. I really don't. I mean, and that gets back to, whether you're talking about talent in the media or you're talking about a politician. The reality is Americans feel like they know Trump and they understand Trump. And that is meaningful. That is meaningful. Okay, Charlotte, I promised I'd talk a little bit about the markets, and I want to just remind you all to go to 76 Research because we got a lot of market talk on 76 Research. You can subscribe for $1 a month to the 76 Research newsletter. 76 Research is my company, and I run it with a longtime dear friend who is a savant on stocks. But I'm not too shabby myself. I've been covering the market for many, many years, and I'm looking at a Dow that's off 1%, S&P off 1.18%, NASDAQ off 1.7% today. The NASDAQ leading stocks lower ahead of a Tesla vote on Musk's pay. Don't forget, he had been promised a pay package, and then there were some lawyers that decided they thought it was too onerous. I mean, forget about their fees. Their fees were like crazy onerous. They were getting paid massive amounts just because they started this class action lawsuit against one Elon Musk. He wound up actually relocating his company out of Delaware law. It was in California. He relocated it to Texas, and he's taking the law that used to be decided in Delaware courts and moving it to Texas as a result. So that's very much on focus. We see NVIDIA that's really struggling. Actually, Rob and I wrote a piece. Actually, there's more Rob the other day because he has a sailing buddy that called him up and said, hey, I got a lot of money in NVIDIA. This guy, he like a zillion years ago, like when NVIDIA was first on the scene, put money in NVIDIA, put money in two stocks. One was a cannabis stock, the other was NVIDIA. And the cannabis one went to nothing, but NVIDIA obviously has soared. And so he's really worried about whether or not this is sustainable, this rally. And so again, I encourage you to go to 76research.com, use code word $. It's $1 a month for the first 2 months so you can get our take on what's really going on there and whether, DeepSeek is the threat that some people think it is. Look, I will tell you this, I'm not going to bet against America. Anytime the market goes down, I go longer. I have a different time horizon than most people. If you're looking to retire next year, I think you're going to have a different set of facts than somebody like me who's really in it for the long haul and believes passionately in the changes that are coming and the technological changes that are coming. I think they're going to be quite massive. And this is my view, and I share that a lot on 76 Research. But I think it's always important to remain calm, to not be reactionary. Look at what happened in April. Right, with tariffs, and the market tanked, and so many people, they're, oh my God, I'm going to sell, and I'll use Charlie Kirk, my late friend Charlie Kirk, actually, who did the smart thing like I did in 2020 when the market was tanking because CNN was telling you that COVID was going to shut down the world and the economy forever, and everything sold off massively, and they were running it like it was like their plain story over and over again. The market's taking 2,000 points on the Dow, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You really think you're going to bet against America? You're going to bet against humanity? And Charlie tells the story, or did tell the story, of how he went totally long triple Qs. Actually, he hedged the triple Qs, so he basically was able to make even much more money because it was it was not a hedge. Forgive me. It was an options vehicle. So he did even better. But my point being, I don't really, at this stage in my life, and again, we're all in different stages, I don't believe in betting against the USA. I think there's a lot more good to come. But you have to do your own thing. And I would encourage you to go to 76 Research. Listen, it's great to have everybody here. Thank you for all that you're doing to make this show a success. Love seeing you all. Love all the comments. And we've got a good little crowd here, don't you think? I think so. Make sure you go check out Spotify. I'll see you back here live tomorrow at a later time, I think. Hit the bell, then you'll know.